Welcome to the All Facts Matter podcast, where we push back against corporate media propaganda with facts, evidence, and data. I'm Peter, the author of All Facts Matter. Let's begin. The important context to remember when reading the December Employment Situation Summary from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is always Mark Twain's famous aphorism: there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. As is always the case whenever the report prints a surprisingly good jobs number, we must pause to consider whether that number is a lie or a damned lie, given that we know it is a statistic. And the December report printed a surprisingly good jobs number. 256,000 jobs were created, according to the BLS Employment Situation Summary. Now, to put this number in proper perspective, we need to keep in mind that this is a seasonally adjusted figure. By definition, this number has been massaged at least somewhat. We also have reason to immediately question the BLS jobs number, because ADP, which releases its National Employment Report in close conjunction with the BLS jobs report, printed less than half the BLS jobs number. According to ADP, the U.S. economy only created 122,000 jobs in December. Has this data been massaged? Yes. Seasonal adjustments are, by definition, a massaging of the data. Has it been massaged too much? Let's see what the data has to tell us. Now, if we look at a longer-term chart, the BLS data does not look to be much out of sorts, if at all. The long-term trend certainly looks to be stable and predictable, which ought to lend a measure of confidence to the data. And it would be quite nice if we could put full confidence in the BLS job number, because not only does the long-term trend appear to be stable in this country, the month-on-month trend in recent months has been up, according to the BLS data. From October through November and then December, the number of jobs created each month has steadily risen. At any level of overall employment, that is very good news. However, this is where we run into the first variance between the ADP and BLS jobs reports. Over that same 3 months, from October through December of 2024, the trend in the number of jobs created is negative, according to the ADP report, not positive. Instead of employment growth picking up steam, which the BLS report indicates has been the case over the past 3 months, the ADP report shows employment growth losing steam. Now remember, both the ADP report and the BLS report measure the employment metrics of the same overall American population. While each report is generated independently, as they are presumably measuring the same thing, we should expect them to be fairly close to one another. That they are not suggests there is something amiss, either with the BLS report, or the ADP report, or even both reports. Errors of poor measurement are not going to be exclusive to one report or another. Now, one obvious source of variance between the reports is the seasonal adjustment calculation, which gets applied to both reports. At first glance, the ADP report does not appear to print much differently from the BLS report over the longer term. However, we begin to see how the reports differ when we look at the seasonally adjusted ADP data and the unadjusted ADP data simultaneously. Straight away, we can see that the employment data has a clear seasonal fluctuation. The highly regular wave in the data is exactly what a seasonal fluctuation is, a pattern of change within the data that repeats on a set cycle, in this case every 12 months. Comparison also shows something significant about how ADP performs its seasonal variance calculation. ADP matches a seasonally adjusted dataset and the raw unadjusted dataset in March of each year, right before the very obvious increase in seasonal employment. Thus, the ADP seasonal chart is a more conservative reading of the data than the unadjusted chart, as the seasonal chart hews to the bottom of the seasonal range in any given year. By comparison, the BLS seasonal computation hews closer to the top of the seasonal range. Now, unlike the ADP report, the BLS report does not actually align the seasonal chart with any month during the course of the year, although the two charts tend to come the closest to each other each September. And because in September, seasonal unemployment is demonstrably higher than in January or even March, the BLS seasonal employment chart will always print higher than the ADP report. Does this make the ADP report more reliable than the BLS report? Not really. The ADP report is going to be the more conservative employment picture, but that does not automatically make the ADP report more credible. Overall, the two reports do broadly show the same trends and relative magnitudes of employment growth, as we can see by indexing the unadjusted data for both reports. Now, the advantage of the ADP methodology is that it has had smaller January corrections than the BLS report for at least the past 2 years. As a more conservative view of the employment situation, any tendency it might have to understate job growth is matched by a similar tendency to understate job loss, i.e., negative job growth, which is what the annual January corrections invariably appear to be. Now, perhaps the best reason of all to question that 256,000 jobs created figure in December per the BLS Employment Situation Summary is this reality that in January there will be a substantial decline in the number of employees counted and or estimated in the report. It is all but certain the 256,000 jobs notionally created in December are going to be reversed in January. What we should take away from these statistical artifacts in both the ADP and BLS jobs reports is that any month's change in employment, particularly in the seasonally adjusted data, is not a reliable absolute measure of employment. We should not place a high degree of confidence in either the 122,000 jobs figure from the ADP report or the 256,000 jobs figure from the BLS report. What we can glean from both reports with confidence, however, are the prevailing employment trends. We cannot know with certainty if the number of jobs created in December was 122,000 or 256,000, but we can have confidence in the overall employment trends which appear in each report. If we look at the seasonally adjusted month-on-month change in manufacturing jobs for 2024 in the ADP report, for example, we see that the ADP reports manufacturing job loss in most months. And while the months of job loss do not align perfectly with the BLS Employment Situation Summary, the seasonally adjusted BLS report also shows the prevailing trend for manufacturing jobs in 2024 to be one of job loss. And when we index the seasonally adjusted ADP and BLS manufacturing job charts to January of 2021, we see that, initially at least, they chart the same general employment growth. Where the two reports diverge is in the first half of 2023. According to the ADP data, there was a period of pronounced job loss in manufacturing. The BLS data does not show that same job loss. However, both reports show the same phenomenon that I have noted before in manufacturing. That manufacturing job growth largely ended in the fall of 2022. With or without the dramatic job loss in the spring of 2023, we can have very strong confidence in the lack of job growth in manufacturing from October 2022 onward. It is also worth noting that from mid-2023 onward, both the ADP and BLS manufacturing job prints show the same plateau and then incremental decline. Yet another confirmation of the stagnation and then decline in manufacturing jobs, which I have discussed repeatedly in recent months. As we look at the different employment sectors, we see the same broad correlations between the two reports, although there is a pronounced break at certain junctures for some sectors. In construction, for example, job growth per the BLS report slowed significantly in early 2024. This was not picked up in the ADP report. In trade, transportation, and utilities, on the other hand, the overall growth trends are virtually identical, particularly from 2023 through 2024. But in private education and health services, it is the ADP report that shows a growth slowdown beginning in late 2023. Leisure and hospitality, on the other hand, have for the past 18 months shown largely similar trends. And the trend in both reports indicates that hiring in this sector has tapered dramatically from what it was in 2021 and 2022. And in the professional and business services sector, there are no significant variances between the two reports. However, both reports indicate that job growth in this sector has been virtually nil since early 2023. Now, if there is one broad takeaway from the individual employment sector charts, it is that job growth in this country is not that great. With multiple sectors showing slowing job growth and even no job growth or even job loss, the realistic assessment of the employment situation in this country is not altogether good. While it is reasonable to assess that there is some job growth that occurred in December, the weakness in the sector level print suggests that the ADP job growth figure of 122,000 jobs is the more credible figure. That the BLS data has been called into question repeatedly by the Philadelphia Federal Reserve tilts confidence even more towards the ADP report's figures. And even within the broader employment situation summary itself, there are reasons to question the BLS 256,000 jobs figure. While the ADP report does largely align with the establishment survey's all employees data within the employment situation summary, neither report aligns well with the household survey's employment level data. Beginning in 2022, the household survey has been printing minimal job growth and even overall job loss. And again, it is important to note that this aligns with calculations maintained by the Philadelphia Federal Reserve, which has ascertained extremely low job growth statistics in multiple quarters since 2022. A further indication of job weakness in this country is the gradual rise of part-time work since late 2022. It is intuitively obvious that full-time jobs are preferable to part-time jobs. An economy that produces an increasing number of part-time jobs while seeing stagnant and even declining overall employment is not an economy that is strong or that has robust job markets. The incremental rise in unemployment is another indicator that the jobs market in the United States is somewhat less than robust. One thing we should pause to note about the reported unemployment numbers: they are undoubtedly more optimistic than they should be, as the real unemployment figure is somewhat higher. One quirk of the way the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks unemployment is that people who do not have a job and who are not actively looking for work are technically not in the labor force and therefore technically not unemployed. They are instead listed as not in the labor force. However, at least a subset of the people listed as not in the labor force would like to have a job now. If we add that number to the number of people listed as unemployed, and then divided the resulting figure by the sum of those listed as being in the labor force plus those not in the labor force but who want a job now, we get an unemployment rate that is significantly higher than the official employment rate. And regardless of which way one calculates the unemployment rate, the reality is that the unemployment rate itself is increasing in this country. And that means, of course, that joblessness is also increasing. Is the BLS guilty of looking at the employment situation through rose-colored glasses? I would say they are. Whether their modeling is simply out of step with the realities of today's job markets, or whether they are simply wedded to an optimistic view of seasonality, there are numerous indicators that the employment situation summary has developed a pronounced tendency to overestimate the overall employment situation. In any given month, its jobs figures will tend to be higher and more optimistic than the ADP National Employment Report, which appears to be a structurally more conservative assessment. We can certainly say that the social media victory laps Joe Biden's handlers enjoy tweeting each month are not at all warranted. Reconciling the ADP and BLS jobs reports also points out the extent to which corporate media is simply not at all inquisitive about the jobs data. Instead of scrutinizing the data and assessing its credibility and its probable accuracy, corporate media has become complacent. There is little or no curiosity about the variances between these two reports, and absolutely no enthusiasm for analyzing them. And consequently, corporate media routinely overstates the employment situation in the United States. They are blissfully unaware that the U.S. is bogged down in a long and deepening jobs recession, and that the employment outlook in this country is becoming more and more uncertain. Even worse, corporate media is ignoring the extended decline in manufacturing employment in this country. That jobs overall are increasing does not alter the economic harm that occurs when an entire sector of the economy is allowed to simply wither and die. Yet corporate media does not bother to explore that dimension of the jobs data. Is the jobs data massaged? Yes, it has to be, if only to address the effects of seasonal fluctuations in labor. Yet the true significance in the jobs data, whether obtained from the BLS Employment Situation Summary or the ADP National Employment Report, lies in the trends that data reveals. While any individual month's numbers are to agree problematic, it is in the trends charted by those numbers that we are able to see if the employment situation in this country is getting better or worse. The jobs data is massaged. The trends, not so much. And when we look at those trends, we see that it is clear that the employment situation in this country is definitely getting worse. It is equally clear that corporate media has no interest in reporting on that, and would rather promote a false narrative of job growth sustained only by looking solely at the top-level numbers and ignoring everything else. And that concludes this presentation. I hope you found this podcast helpful and informative. Please like it and share this with your friends. Word of mouth is how I publicize my work. Please also consider making a one-time donation or becoming a paid subscriber to All Facts Matter. Your support is what keeps this work going, and I greatly appreciate all of my subscribers. Without you, this work would have no meaning. I encourage everyone to be especially generous with feedback. Leave a word or two in the comment section so that we can keep the discussion going and that we may learn from each other. Thank you all for listening, and have a nice day.